I think the only way to really change what's going on in Detroit and a lot of other big cities are in almost as bad shape, not quite as bad as Detroit is to have full school choice between private and public schools, allowing children to take either vouchers or education tax credit funded scholarships to the school of their choice, whether that's private or public.
That conference resulted in the book which we have just released, entitled Educational Freedom in Urban America, Brown v. Board After Half a Century. The book examines the history of Brown v. Board of Education and admittedly paints a fairly dismal picture of the quality of educational practice in America's urban centers. The remedy to America's educational challenges, according to the authors, does not lie in more government, but instead lies in giving parents, particularly inner-city parents, greater educational freedom. Inner-city parents lack the ability, in many cases, to select good schools for their children, and forcing children to attend inferior public schools when better schools, either better public schools or private schools, are available, often right in their own neighborhoods, goes against the spirit of Brown v. Board.
Why are school vouchers a good idea?
Okay, I'd say for three main reasons. The first one is that I think within the education field, people have come to the realization that one size does not fit all. That you cannot design the one best system that's going to work for everyone. So what you need to do is to offer a variety of options to children to see what works best for them. So, give them something to allow them to go out into the system and to find the best possible education for themselves.
A couple of years ago, I did a study that looked at all the scientific research comparing different kinds of school systems around the world, and what I found is that the ones that worked the best consistently across all the different outcomes scientists measured were the ones that looked the most like competitive, free enterprise systems. So the more market incentives were unleashed, the more consumer choice there is, the better schools work. It turns out education's just not that different.
We shouldn't expect that all students who happen to live in a certain geographical area are going to have their needs met by one school.
Yes.
And even in a given family, you'll find that there are some students that thrive in the public schools, and then there are others who need something else that perhaps a private school can offer. And so what we really want is to move away from the sort of top-down, one-size-fits-all or one-size-fits-few model that we've had ever since the industrial era, and move into the 21st century, the iPod generation, where you can tailor an education to every individual child. I think that's the direction we want to go, and so this scholarship tax credit program helps us get there.
But in recent months, No Child Left Behind has been the focus of an unprecedented bipartisan revolt among state lawmakers who argue that it has become a prescriptive regulatory nightmare rather than the flexible reform promised. That the act has been accompanied by huge federal spending increases is incontestable. The federal education budget rose by 49% in President Bush's first term, leading congressional staffers to name the act "No Dollar Left Unspent."
Well, the problem isn't that we don't have good ideas in the United States. You can find a lot of good examples, a lot of good individual schools around the country. This one school is no exception. The problem is we don't have a system that identifies good schools and then helps to encourage them and helps to, reproduce their successes around the country.
Often enough is school choice can really benefit teachers and educators alike. Because in the current system, if you want to be a teacher at the K-12 level, you have one employer, the government. There's essentially a monopsony. And so we hear monopoly a lot, but monopsony is when there's one seller of the service, one producer. So in a system of private school choice, it introduces more competition to acquire good teachers. So like in the Hagwons in South Korea, someone over there is getting paid millions of dollars, $4 or $5 million a year, because there's a system of choice over there.
But the good news is we've had people who've been homeschooling for a very long time, and they have vetted lots of different things that you can use even if your school doesn't provide you, things that you as a parent can go to, and they will give you instructional materials, places like Khan Academy and Prodigy Math and other sort of online outlets like that.
The Cato Institute, my favorite institute, by the way, lays this out. It says there are several reasons federal student debt cancellation is a bad idea. First, it helps the winners, those who made the decision to go outrageously to go out to outrageously overpriced colleges and get a degree. And the higher the degree they earned, the more money they will make, and supposed to pay off their debts. Wouldn't you think that? It's not like those doctors will give you a rebate when your colonoscopy pays for their Mercedes. Follow that for a second, there's no coupon available. It's also regressive, as more of the aid would go to the highest earners than the lowest. Again, giving money back to those who need it the least. How does that make sense? Not to mention the huge cost to taxpayers.
I mean, the evidence is pretty clear that colleges are always looking for money because they always see something they think is important to do. And as long as the federal government supplies lots of loans and also grants, but the loans are the biggest problems, and tax credits and lots of other aid to students, the schools will always look to those students as a source of funding.
Even now, with all this money flooding in, so many schools are still doing this, and they're sending these kids home after, this is our 4th year now of interruptions.
Neil McCluskey is the director at the Cato Institute's Center for Educational Freedom and holds a PhD in public policy and is the author of Unprofitable Schooling.
We really do need perspective on this. Now, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. The administration didn't give any estimates, in part because they probably don't know, and in part because they may not want people thinking about $500 billion. But when the government has a huge debt, and it then says, don't repay us $500 billion, that is money that eventually someone has to pay for.